Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we are going to talk about an article that appeared on Bell of Lost Souls, entitled, I'm calling it, We Need Female Primaris. And essentially this video is going to be me disagreeing with that, it's basically what it boils down to. But I'm hoping that the disagreement will be maybe not quite what you're expecting. If you're expecting, no women, that's not the argument at all. But we'll get into it in a second. But a couple of things before we start. Firstly, the article is actually, I think it's planned out in a weird way. Like it's strangely structured. The title kind of makes you think that you are going to be reading something that will be trying to persuade you that you're going to be told why you should agree. That's the vibe I was getting. That it was going to be like an opinion piece of, this is why I think we need this, and hopefully, having reading this, you will agree with what I say. It's actually more seems to be taking the view of it being an inevitability, I suppose. We're going to see Chaos Primaris, and we're going to see Female Primaris. How would Female Primaris happen? Is kind of the basis of it. I actually, as a side note, agree with the Chaos Primaris stuff, because we've already had that thread introduced. Belisarius Call clearly wants to use Traitor Gene Seed, and I know that Gilliman has said no, but Belisarius Call does whatever the fuck he likes, and so he will inevitably try and create chapters from Traitor Gene Seed, and it will most likely turn out, I would have thought, that either the Gene Seed is a lot more susceptible to corruption, or is actually corrupted itself, but Call didn't detect it, and so Chaos Primaris. Whether or not you want that to happen or feel like that would be a good idea, that is a discussion for a different video. That is a discussion for a different day. But I can easily see that being the case, unless, of course, Games Workshop just decides to drop that particular thread, which is entirely possible. You know, we had all the stuff of, like, especially like the Dark Angels being not happy about Primaris, and yet nothing ever came of that. So it's not entirely impossible that we won't see Chaos Primaris, but it does seem likely at the moment. The Female Primaris thing. Oh no, the other thing, just very quickly. If you've watched this channel before, if you're familiar with this channel and what we talk about and all that stuff, you'll have seen me talk about female miniatures before, for Warhammer 40k especially. And I mean, the overall view that I have in terms of female minis is, yeah, just fucking give them to me now. Just give them to me. I want the variety. I want more models. Who doesn't want more models? We want more models, and especially with ranges whereby there is a female presence in the lore that is just inexplicably missing from the tabletop. Especially those models, give me those. Imperial Guard being an excellent example of that. The men and women of the Imperial Guard. Oh, cool, awesome. How many female miniatures are there for Imperial? Oh, none. Oh, great. It's that sort of thing. It's like, it's there in the lore, it's supported by the background, it's supported by the story. Where is it on the tabletop? Where are those models? Oh, they don't exist? Cool, great. That, I don't like that. I want that variety, I want that choice, and it's lacking right now in certain situations. Does that mean every single model should be replaced with only women? Well, no, don't be daft. So yeah, that's kind of the overall feeling I have towards just increasing the number of female models, especially in general. I'm all for it. Go for it. I want that choice. But female Primaris, and do you actually need them? The answer being no, I don't think we do need them. And to be honest, a lot of why I would really like to not see female Primaris is it's essentially all story and all narrative based. It's got nothing to do with not wanting to see female super soldiers, because I believe there is there's obviously space in Warhammer 40k for that. Clearly is. It's not like there's a lack of threats. It's not like there's kind of no justifiable reason as to why you'd want to make female super soldiers as well as male super soldiers, which is what Space Marines are, let's be honest. It wouldn't faze me at all if we started to see things like that. For me, it's about introduction, it's about context, and to be honest, when it comes to the whole Space Marine debate, like female Space Marine debate, a lot of that to me just comes down to semantics, and that's about it. I mean, if there was for instance, let's look at Sisters of Battle very briefly. The Sisters of Battle, when they are relaunched, when their new range is complete, it's a 2-tier army. You have standard unaugmented Sisters. They form the bulk, they form the rank and file, and there are elite squads of augmented Sisters. They've had either, implants, or they've had some sort of like genetic manipulation, or they have been given similar treatment that assassins go through. I would not bat an eyelid at that at all. You'd be like, oh, awesome, nice, cool, great. As soon as you say the word Space Marine, that's when things start to fall apart, and that's where the argument just becomes kind of muddy and weird in my experience. It seems to be mostly down to, but only men can be Space Marines. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to accept that. That is obviously a big part of the law, and it has been for a long time. There were female Space Marines in the past, obviously, but there have been no female Space Marines for longer than there have been female Space Marines, and the reasoning for why that is the case has been established for a long time at this point. I mean, do they necessarily have to be Space Marines? I don't really think so. I think there's so much in the way of augmentation and stuff that can be done in Warhammer 40k that you don't really need to have a specific label as to what exactly is this super soldier. In terms of distinguishing forces, it works quite well, but I don't see why you would not be able to have females in Warhammer 40k that are equivalent in terms of strength but achieved through different means. It doesn't seem completely implausible. It doesn't exactly seem out there with what we know about the Warhammer 40k universe. The specific problem that I have, especially with the idea of female Primaris, is entirely down to the delivery method. It's entirely down to what that would mean in terms of story and in terms of character and in terms of narrative. The actual arrival of Primaris Marines, I was one of the people who didn't have a problem with it. The idea of improving on Space Marines, it's not a big deal. It had been done in the past. In the Horus Heresy, we have specific examples of Space Marines being improved on, and they're being improved on by people significantly less experienced than Belisarius Cawl. I mean, bloody Fabius Bile managed to implant Lord Commander Eidolon with the ability to basically rip people apart with sonic shockwaves by screaming at them. That is an improvement. He was as strong as a normal Space Marine, as resilient as a normal Space Marine, as fast as a normal Space Marine. He was arguably better in combat than a standard Space Marine because he'd risen to the position of Lord Commander, but he could also annihilate people with sonic shockwaves. That's an improvement. It had already been done. The Raven Guard, Corax, their experimentations with Gene Seed, with the maturation process? I don't know if maturation is the right word. But, enabling candidates to mature faster, that was experimentation, and for the most part it was working pretty well until the Alpha Legion started screwing things up. The idea of a guy disappearing for a few thousand years and coming out with improvements such as being a foot taller, slightly more resilient, not quite as likely to fall to chaos, and with a better gun is not really beyond the realm of possibility. No, the issue was with the delivery system that is Belisarius Cawl, and it's mostly that my dislike of the idea of female, and he said Stormcast, Primaris hinges itself on. The method by which Primaris were placed into Warhammer 40k, I don't think worked very well. I think Belisarius Cawl was used as a delivery mechanism, not as a character. He didn't have the pedigree, he didn't have the standing, the background, the history required to be as significant as he is. This is someone who changed the face of the Imperium. Like, he actually did. Whether you like it or not, he unarguably did change the face of the Imperium. He created an improved breed of Space Marines. And yet when you go back and you look for his name, when you look at what he had achieved in the past, when you look at this legendary Archmagos who is so skilled and so resourceful and so radical that he'd be able to do this, it's just not there. He's nowhere. He's a nothing. He doesn't appear. He has no history. And as such, he felt like a delivery system for Primaris. He felt like someone who's introduced literally only to say, here's some better Space Marines. The problem that I have with the idea of female Primaris is that it would be exactly the same again. See, he's already going to be used as the delivery system for Chaos Space Marines, or Chaos Primaris Space Marines, sorry. And that's going to be as unsatisfying and as kind of a little bit lazy feeling as it was when Primaris were introduced. If he then messes with gene seed, messes with implants, and goes, and for my next trick, here are female Primaris. That's not interesting. That's not a good story. That's not a good narrative. That's not a good method of delivering that change. It feels like just throwing a character into a setting in order to be able to throw other characters into the setting off the back of them. You want, or at least I want, if something that significant, if something that big happens, if actual female Space Marines make an arrival in Warhammer 40k, I kind of like it to be for a reason that's better than this dude we introduced to enable change has changed something else, you know? I'd like to see something more significant than that. Something that has more heft, more weight. And that's kind of where that comes from, to be honest. Primaris, I don't think... They are both the perfect method by which to get female Space Marines into Warhammer 40k, and yet they are also the least interesting method to get female Space Marines into Warhammer 40k. They are both at the same time, and it's entirely down to the way they were introduced themselves. They were introduced by a character that was just used as a vehicle for introducing them. If they then become the catalyst for female Space Marines, that's going to have the knock-on effect of them feeling like they were introduced to introduce a change to the Warhammer 40k universe. That's not satisfying to me. That's not interesting. That's lazy. That's doing something without really attempting to make it as compelling or as interesting as it could be. The semantics of all of this, of, you know, what is a Space Marine? Can a woman even be a Space Marine? Do they even need to be Space Marines? Could you not just have female super soldiers that aren't Space Marines? That is all, you know, debates that could be had for ages. My main issue is not with the idea of female super soldiers, because those, especially in the form of assassins, already exist in Warhammer 40k. It's entirely about the delivery of this stuff. It's entirely about the way it's introduced, the way that it is put into the universe. Belisarius Call is not a good method for introducing that stuff. The Primaris are both an excellent and also terrible way of introducing that stuff because of the way they themselves were introduced. So I don't think we need female Primaris, because I think that would be a very lackluster, uninteresting, like narratively boring method of changing something significant. I don't think it would live up to what it needs to live up to. I think it would feel cheap for the kind of upheaval and dramatic alteration that would mean. So, yeah, that's why I don't agree with that at all, really. If you're going to do something that big, don't use Primaris as a vehicle for it. They're just not there for that. They shouldn't be there for that. Not the right system at all to deliver that change. Anyway, I hope I presented that in a way that makes sense. I'm extraordinarily tired at the moment, so my brain is all over the place, but I think I said what I wanted to say. I guess we'll find out when I look at the comments later. What do you reckon? Female Primaris? I'm going to assume that most of you say no, but the question is why? Is it just down to the established law of only male Space Marines? Is it down to something similar to me, where it's just the method of delivery is not there, that it just doesn't work? It would feel, you know, cheap and lazy and so on. What about the idea of actually having like a two-tier system of battle army, whereby, you know, there are augmented sisters, not Space Marines, but augmented sisters that are, you know, hardier, more resilient, a bit faster. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm trying not to kind of just be like, no, none of it. I think it's still interesting to think about, but I think it needs to be done properly. So, yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'm going to go and fall asleep, most likely. If you feel like clicking anything, Patreon, subscribe, all of that stuff, click it if you like. Don't click it if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.